I'm Courtney Willis Blair. I'm the U.S. Senior Director for White Cube. And I want to thank you for joining us tonight at the Prince George Ballroom here in Flatiron. Tonight's event directly supports the nonprofit organization Breaking Ground. I am delighted to welcome the phenomenal artist, Tracey Emin, to New York on the occasion of two major shows here in the city. Lover's Grave, the inaugural solo exhibition at White Cube, New York, is Tracey's first solo show in the US in almost 8 years, and her 10th solo exhibition with the gallery, the first being 30 years ago at White Cube's first space on Duke Street. Tracey, thank you so much for being here, and congratulations on this major moment. This is actually the Exorcism last painting from 1996.
Yeah.
And in fact, we might want to start there and look at the last, here you're restaging this work from 27 years ago, at a time when you had to really kind of reestablish your relationship with painting. You had stopped painting for 6 years. And in a lot of ways, there's a mimicking of that happening now where after your diagnosis and surgery, you also had to really get back into painting and figure out a way to reestablish that relationship. Can you talk about that a bit?
The Exorcism of the last painting I ever made was made in 1996 in Stockholm. And it was at a time in my life where I was feeling much happier, feeling much better, feeling much stronger, but I still couldn't paint. My grandmother had just died, and she was someone really important in my life, and she spent a lot of time bringing me up. And I was scared of the dark, and I absolutely detested my body, because I'd gone from like being a size sort of mini skin and bone zero to this sort of like plump, what I thought was like hideous, deformed shape. So I went to Stockholm and did this project for 3.5 weeks in this room, naked, painting. And I started off with just completely blank canvases, just lots of paper, very clean, tidy space. And there were fisheye lenses in the wall. And I painted naked, and people looked through the lenses at me. So as you can see, some of the things are pinned up on the walls and whatever. So sometimes people would see this really tiny, naked Tracey, and other times I'd go, wham, be right up against the wall, pressing things on the wall, and I'd hear someone go, oh, like this. And at the beginning, I was really self-conscious, but afterwards, I just didn't give a fuck about anything. And I spent the first 2 days on the telephone. I had the gallery phone. The phone bill I talked to every friend I had about painting. And I said, what the fuck have I done? I haven't painted for 6 years. No, I can't paint. And it's acrylic, because I'm an oil painter. I was going, it's acrylic, I can't paint. I don't know what I'm doing. What have I done? What have I done? And also, I was so conscientious of my body. I had a big, sort of, the Guardian newspaper used to be really big then. And I insisted on having the Guardian thrown over the top of the thing. And I'd just sit there on the bed like this with the Guardian just completely covering me up for the first 2 days. That's what I did, just read the newspaper and made phone calls and chain smoked and drank lots. And then I thought, fuck it, I know what I'll do. I'll just start off with my history of art, mine. All the artists that I like and think about it as I go along. So I had my Egon Schiele painting, my Picasso painting, my Mondrian painting, my whatever. And I just went through my history of painting, and it was just a fantastic 3.5 weeks, and I loved it. I even did the Yves Kleins, which were a lot of fun. And that was right at the end. I had mixed up all the blue paint, and it was the last day. And I also didn't know ever who was behind the wall. I had no idea, unless they really made a lot of noise or something. And I was mixing up the blue for the Yves Klein, and I'd had this giant canvas, and I'd primed it white, listening to The Clash, White Riot, and different, and really like crazy tracks, and I painted it all, whatever, and then I mixed up the blue, and I stood there. And when I put the brush in and I just put it on my leg like that, I heard, she's doing a Klein! And everyone, and then boom, 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 boom. All these people slamming themselves, and there was a lift that you could go down to get onto the other side of the wall with these. And I heard the lift going up and down and clanging, and it was just crazy. And the only it's kind of like a regret, but not now because it's in New York, the thing. But after I finished, it was 3.5 weeks between my period, so I didn't want to be painting with sort of blood dripping all down my legs. I didn't want that kind of look, and I was very conscientious. Yeah, I was kind of conscientious about the look of things. So anyway, and then it was snowing. And there was a courtyard, and the idea was that I was supposed to take all the stuff outside, because I didn't have any money. I didn't have any money for shipping or anything. I didn't have anywhere to keep anything. And the idea was that I was just going to burn it all and just film it on my Super 8 camera, just all going up in smoke. And the reason why another reason why I was doing it, which I forgot, which was really important, is when I was pregnant in 1990, I couldn't stand the smell of oil paint or terps or anything, and I slowly just stopped painting. I couldn't paint anymore. And then I felt so guilty. The reason why I felt guilty about having an abortion was because it was made so difficult for me to do it. I knew I wanted an abortion, but my doctor didn't want me to have one and refused to sign the paper. And it was only when I told him that I'd do it myself that they then got someone to sign the paper. And by that time, I was 4 months pregnant. And for me, that was kind of like 4 months too late anyway. But the whole thing, and then the abortion didn't work. And I ended up it was twins, and one of the fetuses came out, but the other one didn't. And I ended up getting blood poison and nearly dying. So the whole thing just completely racked me with guilt. And I thought I was being punished and all this kind of thing. And every time I smelt terps or oil paint, this kind of repugnant sort of fear and loathing of myself came back, and a really massive sense of failure. Because I kept thinking, how could I have kept that baby? Well, 2 of them actually, God knows. How could I have kept it? What could I have done if I'd have been a successful painter? If this, if that, all these ifs. But the truth is, I didn't want to be a mother. I didn't want to have a child. Otherwise, I would never have had an abortion. It doesn't matter what anyone says. I knew what I was doing. My other great fear about having a child was the fact that I'd worked my way through college, everything. I'd left school at 13, and where I come from in Margate, especially at that time, a lot of girls were mothers at 13 and 14. It was very, teenage promiscuity and pregnancy was rife. And it still is in that area of England as well. It's very, for certain reasons, I blame it on the beach. Anyway. And I just didn't want, my mum didn't want that of me. My mum put me on the pill when I was 14, and I just was determined not to be a single mother, and especially after going to the Royal College of Art and everything, and I wanted to be a painter and I wanted to be an artist. So part of doing this room, Exorcism, of the last painting I ever made, was to get rid of that guilt and get rid of that fear and banish it and become an artist. I will be an artist. I will not be a mother, but I will be an artist. And that's the kind of mantras and things that was going through my head. I will not be afraid of the dark. I will love my body, all of those kind of things. But this is well before it was trendy and hip to do that kind of thing. It was just me on my own going, I've got to sort this stuff out. And I kind of did. But the problem with it was I should have set fire to it all. It should have been like this great big bonfire. Now, I'd be showing you the film of that and the images, and you'd be thinking, wow, she burnt all that. That's tough. But in my head, I'd burnt it. But the gallerist wouldn't let me. He wouldn't let me do it because he said it cost him too much money and this and that and everything. And at the time, I was like 32 or something, and I just sort of said, oh, okay, all right. And now I'd just tell him to fuck off, drag it all out the gallery and set it fire myself. But I'm very happy and very pleased that it's just over the bridge for you to go and see. So,
Well, I encourage you all to go see it. It's really an excellent restaging. You mentioned how, the sort of public reaction, it wasn't so hip to do some of the things that you were doing at the time. And you've always had this sort of commitment to honesty, I think, and to using your experience in life within your work. And I'm curious, your experience with the sort of, the now sort of post-Me Too era, or, versus then, and this sort of the public consciousness having changed, this sort of 180. What's your experience been like between then and now with the new body of work at White Cube?
Well, I don't think it's about the new body of work. Well, there's two new bodies, right? There's mine, which is very different from how it was either there, and also from 3 or so years ago. I'm different, my mind's different, and so I'm not more passive at all, but I'm definitely more thoughtful and more considered and more focused. And the world is slowly catching up with me. All the things that I apparently complained about and moaned about and whined about, abortion, rape, teenage sex, abuse, you name it, I made work about it if it affected me. And I was accused of moaning and whining and whinging, when I was actually making work which affects lots of people, lots of young people, and of course millions and millions of women that don't have a voice, that don't have a way of expressing themselves. I could express my way through art, and then that could be a discussion. But back 30 years ago, I was just deemed as being some sort of moany, whingy, and also people didn't like my accent, they didn't like my attitude, and also they really didn't like the way I looked, because I was much more irreverent and I didn't give a fuck, and I didn't care about the fact that there was more reviews like 25 years ago that started off talking about my breast than there was talking about my work. Now that could never happen now. It just couldn't happen. And I always used to say this thing about, a review of Jeff Koons' work. He strutted in his pink shimmery suit, his balls bridged across, You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do that. Yet they would do that about me. She swaggered in like Moll Flanders, her breast up to her neck, swathed in gold chains. And that wasn't anything to do with my work. It was to do with my attitude and where I came from. And it was a classist thing. It was totally unfair, actually. And now I think, because I'm older, and because I'm not so challenging with people, I tend to walk away a lot more. Actually, I'm never shy away from confrontation when it comes to me, but I will not take it on. I will not make it my war or my battle. I just want to do what I'm doing. But I think a lot, as I said, first of all, a lot of people and issues have caught up with what I'm saying. And the Me Too thing was just brilliant. It was like I woke up one morning and I was allowed to make my work suddenly. It was phenomenal. So,
you talk a lot about your attitude at the time, and recently I've heard you speak quite a bit about your sincerity, but I think its twin element is also a sort of seriousness that you have, and a commitment to art, but to your art in particular. Could you speak to this, how that's changed over the years?
My commitment towards my art.
Your sort of attitude towards how you present yourself and how that deals with your art. You talk about being more thoughtful, being more considered.
Yeah, well, I think also, I said this about America in particular. I was really misunderstood here before, for lots of different reasons, whether it's context, whether this, that, or whatever, but totally was misrepresented, misunderstood, whatever. But I never, ever tried to explain myself. I never tried to make myself clear. I never tried to say to people, I'm really sorry, but you've got me wrong. This is what I meant. I'm sorry if you misunderstood. And I never apologised for myself. And I suppose a lot of people would have thought that was quite arrogant of me. And I think in a way it must have definitely looked like that. And I know for a fact that there was this thing, about critics. Right? So in England, a lot of critics, male critics, were slagging me off really badly. And someone asked me, what did I think of this in an interview? I think it was on TV or something. And I said, well, it's kind of weird that they slag me off because, they come, they interview me. I said, they go home. I said, they have a wank. I said, they write their piece. They shag their wife. I said, they get paid. They take their wife to dinner. I said, and they slag me off. I said, it doesn't tally up, it doesn't make sense. I said this in this interview, and that was it. I was enemy number one, you can imagine. I really was. People hated me for saying it. But it was actually probably, even if it wasn't exactly true, right? I'm not saying, you know, the metaphor was true. It was true literally what they were doing. They were using me and abusing me, and they were getting paid for it. Slagging me off, putting me down, not understanding what I was doing, and they were getting paid for it. And the fact that I would vocally say, this isn't right, this isn't wrong. This is wrong, this is wrong. So, and I think that's changed a lot now, because I think a lot of critics have to be really careful. They can't talk about somebody's mental health. They can't address someone's, take the mickey out of my accent or my class status or whatever. It isn't warranted anymore. They can't do that. So I think things have really, really changed on that level.
Could you talk a bit about what's driving this this sort of return to a more intimate practice and sort of a sort of pure painting practice of it?
Well, so I used to do a lot of sewing, a lot of embroidery. Okay, and the reason why I did that in the 90s a lot is because there wasn't really much room or space for the way that I worked and the way that I thought. So by breaking down my ideas and making them more simple, like with the blankets, with the text, people could tolerate that, but they couldn't tolerate it literally looking at it visually, what I was saying. So I made lots of sewing works and used lots of different mediums, film, photography, whatever. And the sewing sort of got out of hand really in my studio. I was doing these giant embroideries or whatever. And then I woke up one day and realised that I was missing out on something. And the main reason why this was is because I spent a lot of time in France painting, just me and Harry there on our own. And I spent a lot of time painting and drawing. And in a nutshell, when I went back, I decided that I didn't want anybody in my studio. I didn't want anybody working there. And I wanted to take control over everything and do every single thing myself, touch every single thing, because it was me. I'm the artist. No one else is the artist. I don't want to be like some macho guy with a fucking factory, you know, churning out loads of stuff. It doesn't interest me. I don't really think it interests that many other people either, to be honest. And I wanted to just take total control over what I did. And I just took this massive leap. I went to my studio, got all my fabrics, and I have a beautiful fabric collection, which I've had for years and years. Got everything, got my sewing machines, got my needles, my threads, my scissors, everything to do with sewing. Packed it all up and put it into storage. And that was it. And then I just painted and drawing. And I think the other thing is, from a spiritual point of view, I think it's really important. The artist's touch, for me, is so important. The fact that the artist, like I've got some Edvard Munch prints, you know, he's written on them and signed them, and I think, wow, Edvard Munch's hand touched that. Edvard Munch's eyes touched that. His heart touched that. And now I'm touching it. And for me, being an artist, I think, is like, that's so important, to be physical with what I'm doing. I love it. I love the interaction with the paint. I love it when I'm working on giant canvas and I'm throwing myself at it. And I'm a really physical painter. I'm not a painter who paints like, you know, I don't work things out beforehand, and I don't ever really know what colour I'm going to use. It's just all really sort of like dramatic and physical and sort of wild. And when I'm doing the little tiny paintings, it's really myopic, and it's like I'm kissing someone. It's like my head's really into the canvas, and I love it. It's just really intimate. And that's all me. And no one can take that away from me. And it's got nothing to do with anyone looking at my painting. It's to do with me making the painting, how I feel and how I think and how I put myself into it. There you are.
Does it feel like you're in a trance when you're in the studio?
100%. Whirling dervish, going for it. Yeah. One
of the more general questions I hear again and again towards artists is, how do you know that you're done, right? And you've told a few anecdotes about Harry, your creative director, actually taking a painting out of your hands, or...
He didn't take it out of my hands, he takes it out of my bloody studio. I go in and what's that painting gone? Yeah.
Or even waking up in the morning after having, finished a painting the night before and painting over it. Can you talk a bit about...
Yeah. So, before, when I used to drink, I used to stay up late painting, and I do a really good, I would know that it was good the next day because I'd see a picture of it on my phone, but the painting wouldn't be there anymore because I'd done something hideous to it. And I would just paint and paint and paint and paint until I couldn't get into the painting anymore. I couldn't go anywhere with it, and I'd overpaint it, overdo it, I'd destroy it, I'd ruin it. And there'd be a stage just before where it was good, it was really finished, and if Harry saw it at that stage, he'd either turn it around or say, stop, 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 like this. And then sometimes he'd face the other way, and I'd just go with the paint. He'd go, what have you done? But it was always led through to a sort of another psychological journey with it, because even if I destroyed the painting, I'd lost that one, but maybe by painting I'd find a new way of working, something else would happen. So I thought I destroyed paintings because I was drunk. But now that I don't drink alcohol, 3.5 years later, I realise I destroy paintings because I'm slightly nutty and mad. and like I could be laying in bed thinking, there's this painting in the show. If you haven't seen it, it's a really big red one, and it's the first one on your right when you come in. And it was the last painting that I did that's in the show. And I still keep looking at it thinking, I should put a bit of orange just there. and I'm telling you, if I had the orange paint, and if no one was looking, I would go and do it. And probably destroy the whole painting. Because also the other thing is I like to live with the paintings for a long time, and I like to have them around for a long time. And some paintings I started that are in that show, I might have started 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, when I first started painting again, and I might have just finished it. So I need to, sometimes they go out and I'm not sure. So should I say that really? No. But it's the truth. And there's this really good, Jay will tell you, this is a good story. So this painting was going to Miami for Art Basel Miami, and it went and everything, and it was there, and it was from the shipping, it was going to go into the fair, and suddenly they get this phone call going, stop the painting, stop the painting, stop the painting. I said, I don't want to show that painting, I don't want to show that painting. It's not finished, it's not finished, it's not finished. And so they couldn't hang it. And then there's another painting that was that I showed for 2 years or 3 years in a row at the Royal Academy Summer Show, and each time I showed it, it was different. I kept painting on it, and no one realised it was the same painting. So I know it's funny, but this is quite serious. That is the way that I work, and maybe it shouldn't be public. But it is the truth. I think the longest I spent on a painting was I've got one in my studio that I haven't finished that's 10 years old. And then sometimes I have a painting that looks really just like a drawing on top, very simple, very linear, but underneath is like 3 paintings that I've done over the years, and I haven't sort of painted over the whole thing at once. It's just slowly got covered over. So... Yeah. Turning back to Lover's Grave, you've called it your most important show. Why is that? Because it's in New York. You spoke a bit earlier about, your the way the U.S. has kind of seen your work, and I know you've had a difficult, I guess, relationship with New York in the past. But now, having been here and having the show open and having almost 2,500 people walk through the gallery in the last 3 days, I mean, that's quite a welcome, quite an opening. Is that relationship changing? Well, are we talking about New York or America, number one? Are we talking about how I feel personally? Every time I come to New York, I've cried. Doesn't matter what happened, I've cried. This trip has been amazing. It's been fantastic. It's been absolutely, like, for my work, everything, the way everyone's been towards me. And, you know, having success with your work and people appreciating what you do, it makes you feel wonderful. Have I cried? Yes, I have. Not tears of happiness, but tears of sadness. So it doesn't matter what happens with me when I come here. It doesn't matter how brilliant it is. This city, right from the word go, has always made me cry. So I don't know what to do about it, really. So maybe it wasn't the work thing after all. Maybe it's me and the city in New York. I don't know. I find it incredibly lonely here. Look, I'm all on my own in this room. No, but I don't mean it I can't really explain it. I can't even explain it. It's very strange, but...
It's interesting because, on the other hand, you've got a place like Margate to return home to. A place that you grew up in, you spent some formative years, and you left when you were quite young. You were 13, I believe, when you first left Margate.
No, I was 14.
14.
I mean, no, I wasn't. I was 15, but I'd left school at 13.
Okay.
Yeah, still
But
young.
now,
15's pretty young.
Yeah, but now what you've done in Margate has been quite astonishing, with the artist residency program and really being a part of the transformation of that town. I would love to hear you talk about Margate, about what you're doing there, but also a bit about legacy and how Margate sort of feeds into your view on legacy and what you want to leave behind.
Margate is a town on the southeast coast of England, and 15 years ago it was completely boarded up. It was like the poverty levels there are really high, even now. There's about 40,000 people that live there, and 18,000 people live below the poverty level. And that isn't like they don't have much. They really have not enough. It's impossible for them to live. So it's a strange place, and it has Turner painted there. And in Margate in the winter, you have waves that are like 20 feet high. You have like fantastic, the winds are phenomenal. It's a really romantic and sort of like strange, fantastic, like poetic place. The Wasteland was written there by T.S. Eliot, part of it. It's for me, it's sort of magical. But it was very depressing, and it hit really bad times. And what happens when there's bad times for a town that looks good? Creative people go there, artists go there. And Turner Contemporary opened there about 11, 12 years ago, and it's just changed the whole town, and it's kind of sprung up into this sort of like fantastic little sort of like kind of vintage cottage industry, coffee bar, sort of Margate style-y, winter swimming, cold swimming, wild swimming, you know. It's like almost yummy mummy in a way, kind of, but it's pretty good, it's brilliant. And Carl Friedman, who has a gallery there, you know, sometimes we get accused of gentrifying Margate, and Carl says, what would you rather have it? All boarded up and covered in dog shit everywhere. And it's like Margate as well is about half the price of London, which is quite interesting because it's only an hour and a half away from London. And it's really attracted lots of young people, lots of creative people. And I have a big studio there and a nice place to live and everything. And then this building come up for sale, which was an old bathhouse and an old morgue. And it was such a brilliant building. And Carl and Rob Diamond, said, you should have it, Trace. And I said, yeah, well, what would I do with it? And they said, have an art school. And I went, yeah, what a brilliant idea. And within a week, I'd bought this building. And within a year, we'd opened up our art school. And we have artist residency programs, we have artist studios. It's honestly, and at the moment, sounds so silly, but we're making a garden, and a really big garden. I've just dug up the car park. While I've been away, the car park's been dug up, and we're planting trees and soil and everything. So I want to make something beautiful as well. And anyway, it's very exciting, and it's very lovely. And Margate, the best thing about Margate is I left, but it was home. And now I've gone all the way around the world. I've done many, many things, but I've gone home again. And people say to me, wasn't it difficult for you going home? And I said, no, home has changed and I've changed, and now we've met up in the same place. And I feel very few people at my age can go home. It's a really beautiful feeling, and it's a feeling full of contentment as well. So I feel lucky about it.
It's really a beautiful thing that you've done there. And for you, the beginning of Margate and that return to Margate happened as you were thinking about your legacy, is that right?
Yeah, because I was diagnosed with squamous cell cancer in my bladder, which is incurable. And I was expecting the worst. I mean, I had told that if I didn't have this major surgery immediately, I'd only have 6 months to live. And I wasn't, it really, everything, every time I went to the doctors or to my surgeon, the news just got worse and worse and worse. And within a few weeks or whatever, we were working on my will. And Harry and the lawyer were up all night working on it, trying to put everything in place. So when I died, there would be some kind of legacy and there would be some kind of foundation. So, good news, I didn't die, right? And even better news, I'd started the ball rolling with the foundation. I thought, fuck it, I'll finish it. So now I've got the Tracey Emin Foundation, and it means that I don't have children or whatever. I don't have a jet. I don't have my Edvard Munch paintings. I don't have this. I don't have that. But what I do have is I use a lot of my own money for the artists, for the school, for the buildings. I've just recently bought a lot of flats. Small flats, and I've got enough places now for 28 creative people to live in Margate at affordable rents with the nicest landlady in the world. And of course, those affordable rents go straight back into the schools and into the studios again, so it's perpetual, it just feeds itself. And we put on exhibitions there. We've only just really started all the program, but it's already really successful. It's brilliant. And in the residences, we have 10 residences. And for the first time, we had 750 people apply, but from all over the world. And that's before anyone really knew what we were doing or how successful it would be. So our next application is in 2025, and there's no fees. No one pays for studios. We try to get materials. I try to get some kind of funding for them. And I'll tell you how I did it this time. This summer, we had a summer fair. And all the they're called tiers, Tracey Emin Artist Residency. And there's one here at the moment, Jorge, and he's got work shown at the moment in New York. Where is it being shown, Jorge?
James Ventus Gallery.
Yeah, Jane Ventus Gallery. You can see his work, so I'm very proud about that. Anyway, we had a summer fair, and they all had to make their own stalls, their own, summer fair. So we had, throw rocks at the bride. We had, Jorge was Satan, and he wrote a poem for you if you picked the right bean underneath a cup. Everything, someone did drawings of you, this, that. It was all a big mixture, but it was a lot of fun. It was absolutely brilliant. But I hadn't actually got a stall together, and I'd been bullying all of them to get on and make something really creative. And by the way, about 1,000 people came to it. It was really extraordinarily a lot of fun and brilliant. But anyway, the night before, I said to them, right, everybody give me a painting. Give me a small painting, a painting. So they all went and gave me a painting. And I said, what the fuck is that? They're awful. They're terrible. I said, when I said give me a painting, I mean give me a really good painting. So they're all going, why do you want it? Why do you want it? I said, just trust me. Give me a good painting. So they all run off. They all go. And then I go and get an old canvas. And give me some paint. And I make this really quite lovely painting for myself. And they're all watching me. And then the next day I go out on the fence, and I bang all these nails in the fence, and I put all the paintings up, and we have a silent bidding. So people can bid on the paintings, on all 9 of them, and whoever gets the highest bid, silent bid, they get the painting, and mine was included. But I then told them, as their paintings were all so good, what I decided to do was split the money between all of us. So, of course, theirs actually sold quite well. It was quite brilliant. Everybody sold. Mine sold extraordinarily well. So I then said to them, right, this is it. You know, we're splitting the money. You've all got this. You've all got that. They all got £10,000 each. And that money means that they have enough money for the next year to work and not worry about money or anything. And the whole purpose of this was to show them to trust me and to work together, to work in unity, to trust the situation, to work as a group, and to give the best that you can, and something really good comes out of it. So it was a really good exercise, and it was a lot of fun, and it also means that no one's got any excuse now. I've got no stretcher bars, I've got no paint, yeah. So
Thank you, Tracey.
thank you, Courtney. Thank you.